So this is a low back video. Oftentimes we have discomfort in our low back that's associated with what we call low back pain. It's something like 80% of Americans will report to their doctor of having low back pain at some point in their life. In which case, if you have pretty severe low back pain, flanking pain going down your legs, please see your doctor. These next couple exercises is not a rehab. I'm not a doctor, but if you do have a very specific kind of low back pain, and I'm going to show you exactly what this is, where you sit down and you're sitting, let's say, I don't know, for maybe an hour, 2 hours of work at your desk or your home on your couch or something, and as soon as you stand up, you find yourself, one, rocking forward, having to put your hands on your knees, stand up, and then you're stuck here. And it takes you a couple steps like this before you can finally stand up here, and then even still you're walking this way, and then eventually you can stand up straight and walk. If you experience something like that, then I've got a couple of different tools that you can try out and maybe help alleviate some of that and get it so that you can be sitting down for a while and then just get up and then go without having to do all those extra steps of, one, just being uncomfortable the entire time, and then two, just not feeling good about having to do all these extra things simply from standing up. So what's happening? Imagine this is one of your muscles. So this is a hip muscle, and it actually, this specific hip muscle, it's right here in the front, but, right, so it's right here in the front, right where your hip bone is, meets your upper thigh, but it actually attaches to your spine and your low back. So this is what it looks like, right? So you've got a muscle that's right here. We call this muscle a hip flexor. Now what happens when we sit down, and we sit down for long periods of times, over years, maybe over decades of constant sitting in this, which is pretty normal for especially our society, these muscles, they adapt to what they're doing the most, and that is being short. All right, so they shorten up like this. I'm going to fold this a couple times, shorten this up, and they still attach to the same place. They don't change, they just get shorter. So what happens is my low back starts to cave in a little bit this way, and I then have to lean forward a little bit. So as soon as I stand up, all right, so they've been in this position for a few hours, and I stand up, and this is where it is, right? So the muscles are adapted to this length, and I'm stuck in this position as soon as I stand up, and I then have to slowly reintroduce, pushing my hips forward for me to be able to stand up straight. That's just kind of what the reality is, and it's actually it's a simple fix, but it takes time, right? So it's not something that happens immediately, it takes time. But what we want to do is three things. One, we want to start stretching out these muscles in the front, right? That's just what we want to do. Number two, we want to start strengthening the glutes. We strengthen the glutes. When these are stronger, they keep us more in this position, and it keeps this stretched out. So it's not always in that adapted shortened position. This is stronger, which means this is a little bit more flexible. Number three is we actually want to strengthen our core muscles, because our core muscles actually, when we get put in this position where this is shortened, our hips actually start to change its position within our body. So when we tighten our abdominal muscles up and strengthen our abdominal muscles up, it actually pretty much realigns our spine and realigns our hips, so that when you stand up, you can just potentially just stand up and feel a little bit more natural without as much lower back pain as soon as you get up. Hopefully that'll make sense. So this first exercise, what I want to do is to stretch specific for these hip muscles here. Now if you have problems getting to this position, don't worry about it. Like just being on the one knee, you can actually do something where you're like this, where you're holding on to something this way. I'm going to show you this real fast so you can get a good idea. What I'm doing is I'm not leaning forward. I'm not trying to drive my hip really far forward. What I'm actually doing is I'm squeezing my glute, right? So remember what I was saying in the beginning, where if you tighten your glute up, you get that stronger, it actually stretches the hip. I mean, I can just kneel right here, squeeze my glute, and I just felt it start stretching from here all the way down my leg down to here. All right, so that's what I want to do, and I want to hold this for about 15 seconds. And I'm going to add a little bit of breath to it, so I'm going to do a big inhale, And then a big exhale. When I exhale, I actually want to tighten up my glute a little bit more to get a little bit extra stretch. So big inhale, big exhale, and tighten my glute a little bit more. And 3, 2, 1. Then you want to do that on the other side as well. But I'm going to keep moving on to the next exercise. And this is actually what we call a glute bridge. And it's very specifically to target the glute muscles. So now that you've got this all flexible and ready to be ready to not be stuck in this position, we can get into a glute bridge just like this. So I'm on the floor, I've got my hands on the ground, I'm going to point my toes to the ceiling, and then I'm going to squeeze my glutes as tight as I can to come up, just like this. And I'm actually going to hold this bridge position for about 3 seconds. And then guide myself back down. I'm not going to just throw myself back on the floor. I'm going to guide myself back down. And the next, do it again. And then a 3, 2, 1, just like that. And I'm only going to do 5 right now. Take this to 10. I just want to show you a couple different repetitions, or a couple repetitions so you can get the idea of what's happening here. So I push through the heels, get my hips as high as I can, squeeze my glutes as hard as I can, and then guide myself back on down. And here's the last one I'm going to demonstrate. And I'm really leading pretty much with my belt buckle to get it to the ceiling, right? You can't really get too high with this if you're trying to maximize the glutes. This final exercise is very specifically targeting our abdominal muscles right through the front here. And like I was saying in the introduction, when we have stronger abdominals, stronger core muscles, it actually helps line my spine up back here and helps line up my hips together. And that's good because when this happens, this is my back being bent in a little bit from these tight muscles in the front. We address these. Now we just got to strengthen all these extra muscles around it to make sure that I stay in this position. So in comes the plank. Now with the plank, I want to do 2 big things. Number 1 is I'm going to actually place my thumbs on my lowest rib, my pinkies on my hip, and then close that distance a little bit. Then number 2 is squeeze my glutes as much as I possibly can and hold it for 15 seconds. So I'm going to do the whole 15 seconds here just to show you that this can actually be a pretty challenging type of plank. So I'm in this position, I've got my core in the right place, and starting in 3, 2, 1, I'm going to tighten my glutes as much as I can. Now as I'm doing this, I'm making sure that I don't let my hips fly up or let my hips drop to the ground. I'm holding my core as tight, bracing as tight as I can, and squeezing my glutes as tight as I possibly can. And there's 2 and 1. All right, now the combination of, again, this is what we call the hip flexor, so stretch, so right over here, hip flexor, stretching this out. The second thing is tightening up your glutes, strengthening those. And the third thing is tightening up and strengthening your abdominal muscles. And over time, hopefully that'll help out specifically with some of that getting up out of a chair, getting up out of a couch, whatever it might be, and alleviating some of that low pain as soon as you do that. Hope this helps.